So in October 2020, 15th October 2020, I think, around that time, Stripe bought Paystack for $200 million. And that started a wave of businesses, of founders and investors building things because they wanted to be acquired. Now, most people would just assume it's because it was fintech, which is why Stripe got acquired. I think fintech is a big part of it. But the more interesting insight to me, which I think many people miss when they talk about the Stripe acquisition, is the foundation, right? What Paystack did is they built a solution that was so locally relevant and efficient that an outside player who was looking for leverage in the local market thought to themselves, the best thing we can do is buy. And that's actually the thing that is at the base of every major acquisition, by the way, right? Is that somebody wanted a certain kind of leverage either in an industry or they're looking to, expand, and they sought different ways to do it, and it was like, you know what, this guy has built something that's really working, and it's just better for us to buy them and try to compete with them because we don't have time to do the work. Which is an interesting take, because many founders that I speak to have this notion of, especially Ghanaian, like, oh, Ghana is not big enough, or oh, Africa is not big enough. We need to export, we need to go internationally. Now, I understand the sentiment, because for certain things that you're building right now, if you want cash flow, if you want quick valuations to grow in the short term, yes, Africa doesn't necessarily look like it could be the play. But why I think you should bet on Africa, and why I'm betting a lot on Ghana and Africa over the next decade, is because as the world gets more and more interested, the demand for locally relevant content is going to be really high. The demand for locally relevant insights, because when they come here, they have money, but they're going to have to combat this cultural context that they have no understanding about. And they rather buy and invest in somebody that has figured it out than try to build it themselves. That is a fundamental insight. So if you're like a VC or founder looking for your next big thing, the next big exit, I think you should consider this idea of building deeply for the local context, right? But the question then is, okay, are there any specific verticals? Are there any specific industries, any specific spaces that I can build in a way that creates the upside that I want? Yes, there are many. Agriculture is one of them. It's growing really, really fast. I think Ian from Andela is doing a lot in like exporting talents for AI training and stuff like that. I think that's another play. But another play that I see, which is spoken about, but I don't think is well understood from my perspective, is data. Okay, data. Because as the world comes here, like I already said, they're going to want insights, but also in the wake of AI, LLMs, and all these different things, we just need a lot more data to be able to make use of these things. So data is going to become a very, very crucial play. So I have 3 ideas or 3 ways I think a data play could happen, right? Especially if you're going to build for such acquisition. One is what I call aggregation and discovery. There are so many things popping up on the African continent, right? So many things happening in lifestyle especially. But just generally, right? Restaurants, lounges, schools, hospitals, like there's so many things happening, but it's hard to find any of them easily. And even solutions like Google Map don't really work because we don't see any immediate benefits, or businesses don't see any immediate benefits on getting on these platforms, because we are still very much like a network of small networks. People are still very much community-based. Information and discovery is happening within our community. So most businesses don't see the need to get on like a large data platform because the discovery is not happening that way. But I do think that with the way consumer behavior is shifting and things are happening, discovery at a macro level is going to become a really, really important thing, right? Can I go online and find something very quickly, very fast, without having to talk to my friends, search Instagram, do all this gymnastics? So anybody that's able to aggregate all this information and put it in one place and make the discovery easier and find a way to keep it up to date, which is some of the hurdles, I think could be a very important player, because I can see someone like a Google very interested in that if they just want, better cultural context, better local aggregation. Now, the problem there, or the thing you're going to have to overcome, is first of all, it's just like a lot of work, all right? So, finding the agent network, onboarding people, like that's going to take a lot of work. Second, the business owners don't really get it. They don't really understand like why you should, get on these platforms. So you're going to have to figure out the value for them to onboard. And 3, the business model, right? How do you make money from this? We don't want to kill people with ads. Like, are you going to create a SaaS, build a vertical, do all these different things? But that is the point. That is why when you build it and you figure it out, it's going to be ripe for acquisition, right? So I think aggregation and discovery is like one of the big plays. The next big play, I think, is behavioral data. Okay, now when most startups that I've seen trying to solve data problems in Africa, they lean heavily on reported data. Okay, you go ask the customer a question and the customer gives you information. But if you take a good look at the businesses that have been able to leverage data in globally, the thing that they do well is they get data as a byproduct of behavior, right? So you use Google for free, you use Instagram for free, you use X for free. But because of that usage patterns, they get to have behavioral data and accumulate all this data on you, which is more truthful than reported data, right? Because if you're doing something and I'm just observing you, it's easier for me to get more accurate information than if I ask you directly, because now you have to think, now you're going to tell me a story. So I think behavioral data is a really, really big play. The third big play, I think, is enterprise. I was judging a startup competition 2 years ago, and every startup was like, oh, we're gathering data, we're gathering data, we're gathering data. Cool, but I know that most of those startups will do nothing with that data. They say it because it sounds good in pitches and it makes them feel like they're building some leverage outside of the product, but that's not their core business. So I think some kind of enterprise data brokerage that is interested in helping the startups work with the data they have, first by just getting insight from that data, but two, also cleaning up that data, establishing patterns and guidelines, and just becoming like almost like a data as a service to these startups could actually really, really work, because one, they can aggregate enterprise data, and they can create a data marketplace that allows them to sell this data to whoever is interested in it, and these startups also get the benefit of making extra money from that data without having to consciously and actively be involved, right? So those are the three places that I see. Now, somebody may be asking, okay, what stops Google and all these people from just like building this themselves? Well, I already said it from the beginning, which is that Africa is not big enough yet that these people want to waste or spend time building anything themselves here. But it's consequential enough that if somebody builds it, they will buy it because it's the easiest thing. So I think that's a play. But this is just dealing with the surface, right? Like in each of these categories, there are deeper questions about the approach, possible place, the risks, what I think could work better than others. Should you build two of them or all three? I delve into all that in the article called The Next Big Acquisition. It's on my blog. I'm going to put the link in the comments. So go check it out. It's a long read, but I think it's an important read for anybody who's trying to build anything, especially if you're considering the next big exit. But if you're not going to read the article, I'm still interested in your opinions on this. What do you think is going to be the next big opportunity? What do you think is going to be acquired next, and for how much, even if you have some ideas? So just some thoughts on where I think the world is going, and I hope it helps. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you around. Cheers.